this psalm didn't say it was of David, I'd be tempted to say it was of Peter, because so many of the thoughts and ideas that we were thinking about last Sunday appear in this psalm. It's like Psalm 124 is a poetic expression of Peter's description of how God keeps Christians for their heavenly inheritance. I wonder if you can remember how he put it. He said that Christians are those who, through faith, are shielded by God's power until the coming of the salvation that is ready to be revealed in the last time. 1 Peter 1 verse 5. Peter says that God's elect exiles are kept by him as they journey to receive their inheritance in the new creation. Last Sunday we thought a bit about the shield that this verse speaks of, and we said that it's not a guarantee that we'll never experience pain or suffering. Peter knew that, his readers knew that from experience, and indeed so do many of us. But this shield will stop things that would prevent us from enjoying our inheritance, from not making it to the promised land. Peter goes on to say, in effect, what the shield lets through will strengthen our faith, and what the shield stops, well, they're the things that would have derailed our faith. And as we come back to Psalm 124, so many of those themes reappear. If you remember, in these songs of ascent, we're listening in to the songs of God's pilgrim people as they journey towards Jerusalem. They're much like us, his elect exiles, except that, well, we're journeying to the new Jerusalem and not the one that's in the Middle East. And like us, like Peter's readers, those people in Psalm 124, those pilgrims, are facing the scorn of the nations. They speak of how they're under attack in verse 2. In verse 3, they fear that they might be swallowed up alive by all the anger that is being poured out upon them. Then in verse 4, the imagery shifts. It goes from the earthquake of verse 3 to a flood in verse 4 as torrents rise around them. In verse 5, they're in danger of being swept away. Such is the hostility of their enemies. But crucially, the Lord is on their side. The Lord is on their side, so they are not swallowed up. They're not engulfed. They're not carried away. Yes, they're wounded, but they're the walking wounded. They're still on the journey. And that is even more clear as the metaphor shifts in verses 6 and 7 as we move from the physical world to the animal world. In verse 6, their enemies are likened to wild beasts that have got their teeth into God's people, but God's people have just escaped their jaws. Or in verse 7, God's people are like the bird that lands in the fowler's snare, but the snare is broken and they are able to escape. They clearly bear the scars, but they are free. They are able to keep going. And here's what I think is really striking. What is it they do in the midst of their struggles? Do they complain? No. Do they stoically stiff up a lip and keep going? No. What does verse 6 tell us they do? They praise the Lord. They rejoice, confident in the knowledge of verse 8, that their help is in the name of the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. It's so like 1 Peter, isn't it? That's exactly what he said to them. Blessed be the name of the Lord. This is the Christian life. Yes, it's bruising. The Bible is honest about that. And sometimes it will feel like you may not make it. But the Lord is on our side. We are on our way home, and we will make it there as those who through faith are shielded by God's power until the coming of the salvation that is ready to be revealed in the last time. 1 Peter 1 and Psalm 124 speak to God's pilgrim people. And they both say, in the midst of the pain, you can praise the Lord, because he is the maker of heaven and earth, and he is on your side, and he will get you to your inheritance in the New Jerusalem, no matter what and no matter who stands in your way.